Today, we're diving into something that could completely change how we see Alzheimer's disease. It's a story that's shifting from just waiting for symptoms to appear to actually listening to a hidden electrical language that the brain has been speaking all along. Okay, let's just jump right in. For, over a century, the story of Alzheimer's has felt like a tragedy you only discover when it's too late. Memory loss is the first real sign. But science is uncovering a totally new reality. The first sign isn't a forgotten name. It's more like a faint electrical whisper, something we can pick up years before anyone would notice a thing. To really get how big of a deal this is, we first have to look at the old story, the one we've been told for over 100 years. I mean, think about it. The traditional view, and this goes all the way back to Alois Alzheimer himself, was that you had to wait for those clear, often devastating symptoms. By the time a doctor could say for sure, the disease already had a serious grip on the brain. So this meant the whole diagnostic journey was, well, it was backwards looking. The real changes in the brain had started silently, sometimes decades earlier. By the time the memory loss got bad enough for a diagnosis, so much damage was already done. And final confirmation, sometimes that could only happen after a person had passed away. But what if the brain wasn't silent at all? What if it was sending out distress calls the whole time? Early warnings broadcast in a language we're only now, finally, learning to understand. This is where everything changes. Okay, so here's the key idea. Our brains are always humming with this rhythmic electrical activity. You can almost think of it as the brain's background music. Scientists have a name for it, neural oscillations. And it turns out, hidden inside that music is a secret message about our future health. And this is where it all clicks into place. Long-term studies using EEG, which is just a way to measure those brainwaves, have found these tiny, subtle disruptions in that electrical rhythm. And these little changes can actually predict cognitive decline years, literally years, before a person feels lost, confused, or starts forgetting things. So how on earth do you translate this electrical whisper into a clear warning? Well, it all comes down to decoding the brain's unique language, and it's built on 4 key pillars. It's kind of like a 4-step guide. First, you listen to the brain's overall rhythm. Then, you zoom in and find the specific frequencies that are changing. That's the signature of the disease. After that, you map out how those changes are causing communication networks to break down. And finally, you put it all together to predict the future pattern. And check this out. This is the actual electrical signature they found. In the early stages of Alzheimer's, there's this really distinct shift. The power of the slower theta waves goes up, while the power of the faster alpha waves, which are normally dominant when we're resting, goes down. It's a super clear, measurable change. Now, this isn't just the music changing tempo. It's a sign of a much deeper problem. It shows that crucial communication networks in the brain are starting to fail. You can think of key hubs like train stations just going offline. This really hits something called the default mode network hard, and that's the network we use for memory and our sense of self. When it starts to fail, the brain has to work way harder just to keep up, and eventually, it just gets exhausted. So, we've got all this raw electrical data, but how do you turn that into something actually useful, something that can predict the future? This is where the magic really happens with some seriously smart tech. Scientists use powerful machine learning algorithms, a type of AI, to sift through all these complex brainwave patterns. And then the AI combines that electrical data with other things we know are risk factors, like a person's age or their genetics, to create a really complete picture. And the results? Honestly, they're incredible. These models can predict if someone is likely to progress to Alzheimer's with 80 to 90% accuracy. That level of foresight is just a massive leap forward. It's way better than a lot of the methods we used to rely on. Which brings us to the most important question of all. So what? Why does any of this matter? It matters because this is about completely rewriting the story of Alzheimer's itself. It matters because this electrical signal can give us a heads up, a warning window of up to 36 months. Let that sink in for a second. That's 3 full years before major symptoms are even expected to show up. 3 years. And that window of time, that's not just a number, it's everything. It changes Alzheimer's from something we just react to into a condition we actually have a chance to act on. It shifts the whole conversation from just managing decline to hopefully preserving health. This kind of early detection just blows the doors wide open for new treatments. I mean, instead of trying to get back what's already lost, we can start to imagine a future where we intervene before the symptoms even begin. This could lead to targeted therapies, like using neuromodulation to restore healthy brain rhythms, or maybe perfectly timed medications to protect the brain when it's most vulnerable. So really, what we're witnessing here is a fundamental redefinition of the disease. We're moving away from seeing Alzheimer's as this sudden, tragic thing that just happens, and we're starting to understand it as a long process, a continuum that we can finally watch and measure from its very earliest stages. And all of this leaves us with one final, hopeful thought. For decades, the storm of Alzheimer's just seemed unstoppable. But now that we can finally see the very first signs, the question is no longer if we can see it coming. The real question is, what are we going to do with that knowledge?